Well,
Okay.
Rich, we're going to do a tribute to Hulk Hogan in between our ages and lost too soon, although I'm sure he had a different life than we had in terms of supplements and other kinds of perhaps performance enhancing things. But he made the most of his physical ability. And I don't think he did illegal stuff. Just that was what was done in wrestling. But 71 years old is not old anymore. It's a sad day for an iconic guy. Thank my sponsors, Topps Panini, Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Hugs and Scott Auctions, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Burbank Sports Cards, ComC.com, and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. Probably affects all our sponsors in some way. I've already sold something on ComC.
Do you have enough cards for an eBay lot?
No, I don't do small eBay lots. I need about 100 assorted cards, so not enough of Hulk Hogan. But I think he sold well, but he'll sell great for the next week. And I'm not going to mark him up, but I don't like people bottom feeding me and trying to make me low offers on it. So what's your take on that? I think it's a big loss, although he was pretty much retired at 71.
I'm going to start with a totally different thing. When I first started working at Beckett in 1990 for you, I was doing football. And at the time, there was a 1973 Topps football card of Terry Owens. And the rumor was, if you read Sportsnet, that Terry Owens really was Hulk Hogan. He wasn't, of course.
Which is half correct, because his first name at birth was Terry.
Correct, Terry Bollea. And that card got up to $5 in 1990 just on the hype that he was Hulk Hogan.
Okay, was Terry about 6'8" and 290 pounds?
He was an interior lineman.
Okay.
So he had the right body type to do that. And the kicker to this story, and I still have the email, is when I was writing for Sports Collectors Daily, I did a story on that card. And Mr. Owens' widow sent me a thank you note for remembering the whole story, which was really nice. She didn't have to do that, obviously, but she was very honored that people still remembered the whole thing. And I thought that was cool. And so that's a different type of card insight that most people never remember. But every time I see that card when I'm doing ComC work, I think, oh, yes, Hulk Hogan. Okay, there we go.
All sports are not equal in terms of life expectancy. And football is one of the shorter life expectancy sports. I bet wrestling probably is too.
Oh, wrestling definitely is. A lot of wrestlers don't even make it to 71. And you have the best Hulk Hogan card on your wall.
It's not on the panel that I show because he's under H and these are OPRS, but he was very worthy. In fact, he's one of the reasons I reoriented my original wall concept was to do all the baseball, then all the basketball, all the football, all the hockey, and then do some minor sports. And it was not my brother-in-law, but Diane's cousin's husband, who was a huge wrestling fan. He walked into my card cave and was quickly bored with all of the mainstream sports. And he was on his way out, and out of the corner of his eye, he saw wrestling. And then he wouldn't leave. He stayed. He wanted to stay for hours. And he was like you in terms of looking at it. So he pulled out a box of cards, and just with the upper right corner of the card, he knew who it was. He'd done some wrestling announcing on a regional level and was a huge fan. And he was in heaven all of a sudden. If you're a wrestling fan, you're not usually lukewarm. You've got your heels, you've got your favorites, and regional differences too.
Yeah, I think the regional differences are a little less now, but definitely in the 70s and 80s, regionals were huge. And I remember one of my professors at Columbia was at Madison Square Garden one night when a wrestling match let out. I don't know why she was walking around that night. You're in New York City, you're in the area. And at the time, the vast majority of the people who went to wrestling were Hispanic, which was an interesting demographic, which is also why spanning the globe in the 1970s for a while, at the time, the WWF, now WWE champion, was a gentleman by the name of Pedro Morales.
Yeah.
Because if one of your major demographics for the live shows and your biggest place in Madison Square Garden are Hispanic people, you get a legitimate Puerto Rican wrestler who was very good, to be your heavyweight champion.
In fact, I started watching wrestling in the late 50s and the 60s and 70s. Actually, it was very ethnic.
Yes.
There was an Italian champion. There was, like you say, Hispanic. There were Canadians. There were Germans. There were Asians. There were everything. And they had their followings. And it wasn't discrimination necessarily. In fact, I think the promoters and the associations wrote in storylines to give each a day in the sun. But Hogan, which he wasn't always Hogan, the Hulkster, all the different things he had, which may have been for marketing, he always had a broad and deep following because he was exceptional. He was exceptional. He had the personality, the looks, and the abilities and the size.
And in the 1980s, he was very pro-American.
Yes.
And remember, the Cold War is ending, and so pro-American in the 80s is a great way to be for wrestling. Again, Vince McMahon, and you can say good and bad things about Vince McMahon, but one thing you can definitely say about Vince McMahon, he knew how to promote effectively. And he knew with Hulk Hogan, he had the man who actually brought wrestling to the next level.
How do you think Hulk Hogan got into the Rocky movie? He's like a foot taller than Sylvester Stallone, and they're both big, broad-shouldered, buff guys at that point. But how was that believable?
Remember, it's Rocky. The whole premise of the Rocky movies is kind of not believable. It's based on Chuck Wepner, who went 15 rounds with Muhammad Ali in 1975 before Ali finally dispatched them. And Wepner, did he really knock down Ali, or did he step on his foot and get Ali to the canvas that way? So there's already some suspension of reality. And then the Rocky 2 movie, where there's the double knockdown and Rocky gets up the second before Apollo Creed. Sylvester Stallone did a great job with the Rocky movies.
Oh.
And he probably saw what was happening. He's a smart guy. And he said, if I can get Hulk Hogan into the movie, that'll knock it up another notch. He also had Mr. T. I mean, Mr. T would then explode with the A-Team. I don't know if he was already on the A-Team, but he exploded too in the 80s.
Yeah.
So there was some great casting he did at that time.
But you're saying Hulk Hogan brought a lot to Rocky 3 or the other way around?
Probably both. I would think it's both. He brought a lot to Rocky 3 because there's a lot of wrestling fans out there who may not always go to the movies, but they're big Hulk Hogan fans. Hulk was already developing. I think he may have been champion by that point.
Yeah, in 82 was when the Wrestling All-Stars A&B sets from the Wrestling Magazine that I got in 82. So I didn't get them later. I got them right from the offer. And they're condition sensitive because they just were a pack of cards. But there were some old timers in there. These were wrestling icons already by 82. Yeah.
So I think it's a mix of both. And he's done other media too. Hulk Hogan was very media savvy. He knew what to do. As I said, under the WWF tutelage, he was able to take it to another level. And he got so popular, classic / scoreboard, did sets in 89 and 90. And now Tops is doing wrestling, which tells you
it's fully arrived. Yeah.
It's fully arrived. Hulk Hogan played a huge part in getting wrestling fully accepted.
I did a tiny bit of reading on his Wikipedia page, and I was struck by the fact that, and this is probably true for most of these wrestlers, is that he was not an overnight sensation. He put in a lot of work, probably in his 20s, getting ready to be the Hulk Hogan that he was. Yes, he probably was born as a big kid, but he really worked at it. And wrestling is a craft. There's personality aspects, there's timing and athleticism for sure, and strength, flexibility. But he got injured a lot, which is another reason that kind of shortens your life, I think, when you're having other surgeries and broken bones and things like that.
Oh, wrestling is littered with people who, for various reasons, don't get to the top. And remember, at the very pinnacle where he was, it's not just being a good technical wrestler and knowing how to act and emote, but it's also how you present yourself to the public and how do you do your media. There's so much out there, unless they create something for you being the quiet person, like you don't say anything and your manager speaks for you. That's one storyline you can do, but Hulk didn't need a manager to do his storyline. He could do it without a manager. He could do the Hulkamania.
Yeah. One of the things that comes up when guys like that pass away is that you just wonder, he's now passed at 71. What would he have been at 81? What would he have been at 91? As I've said, to have 91 mediocre years, it's probably better to have 71, not all spectacular years, but a lot of success. He made a lot of people happy.
You
But
know,
I bet the last year, we see it in our parents, the last year or two or three sometimes can be pretty rough. So he may have had it rough this past year. I wasn't tracking on that. But now, as happens, we hear about a famous person passing, and it brings scrutiny to their life, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But there was a lot of good there.
and we try to focus on the good on your
Yeah,
podcast. And for
yeah.
everything he did for the sport of wrestling, he's definitely worth a tribute. For everything he did on cards, he's worth a tribute. I did not count how many, but he's on a lot of cards, and a lot of them are multi-sport sets too, in addition to the wrestling. When he acted in some movies, he's got some non-sport stuff. I'm sure he's in something like the Americana sets or Tops if
Yeah.
they did like American Pie sets. He'd be in sets
Right.
like that. So he's well remembered. I would wager he's the best known wrestler ever because of how popular he was in the 80s. He took wrestling to another level. For a generation that grew up in the 80s and even the 90s, he's the main wrestling person they knew.
He said it was Ric Flair. Hulk
He
Hogan.
give Hulk Hogan credit for deflecting himself, but it's Hulk. Ric Flair was in the wrestling world probably even better regarded. But outside the wrestling world, in the real world, it's where Hulk Hogan is better. And considering collectors aren't always in the wrestling world and they're in the real world, I give it to Hulk. But Ric Flair is definitely so well respected that his daughter Charlotte is like the female champion in the WWE. And she's taking up her father's mantle. And dad was still winning titles, I'm sure with some help, into his 70s.
So are we saying that at his peak, Hulk Hogan was the Caitlin Clark or the Shohei Ohtani of his sport?
Absolutely. To me, that's without a doubt. Our mutual friend, Bo Spencer Thompson, was doing an eBay live today, and I had seen that note on our ComC chat, and I posted it into the chat, Hulk Hogan, RIP. And the reaction from not just Bo, but from the people who are the age that grew up with Hulk Hogan was palpable about just how important Hulk, you could tell how important Hulk was to not just Bo, but the people in the chat.
Okay, question, because we're Sports Card Insights, is that it's possible the bump Hulk Hogan will get in the next week, that today is already happening, could be enduring.
It will be.
He might be at a higher level, and he may even elevate all wrestling cards, even though there's different associations. Do you have that same sense?
It will be enduring for Hulk, especially for the autographs, since he can't sign anymore. And the other cards up a level. When you did your tribute to Dave Parker, that we all found out when we were at the Sabre convention, Dave had his bump, but he's going to go back to where he was. Because we know Dave Parker best for We Are Family in 1979, those two iconic throws in the 79 All-Star game. We know him for that. Hulk Hogan, we know as a cultural icon, and that's the difference.
He's a first-rank Hall of Famer.
Yes.
Dave Parker had some great years and an MVP, but he is not in the first rank. He's not the best right fielder from Pittsburgh. But at any rate, now
being second to Roberto is not bad.
It's not bad, but still. So we're wondering if Hulk Hogan is second to anybody.
He's not. To me, the wrestler who was the heavyweight champ that I grew when I was 7, 8, 9, it was Bruno Sammartino.
My guy, when I was 10, he was the guy.
Right.
He was undefeated.
He's from Pittsburgh.
He was from Pittsburgh. He was undefeated in Pittsburgh. I promise you that.
Oh, yeah. Nobody's beating him in Pittsburgh. But Hulk Hogan, you don't beat Hulk Hogan nationally unless it's written in for him to lose so then he can come back and be champion again.
With a grudge or something, yeah. I don't know how they hit these guys with chairs and things like that. It's just a rough sport. Even the choreography is still...
And they have codes like I'm giving you right now. If you see a code like this, that means a wrestler is really hurt. They know if somebody's really hurt when wrestling or whether they're playing hurt. And there are codes the wrestlers give people to tell people, hey, no, this is a real injury. We got to work around this one.
I think Hulk Hogan was doing most of the hurting.
He was. You're not going to hurt him.
But thanks, Rich, for the
Thanks,
walk down memory lane with Hulk Hogan. As you say, R.I.P., rest in peace. Hulk brought a lot of joy to a lot of people and had a hobby impact. As you said, those sets that Topps and Opeachy put out, those were Hulk-centric to me. Andre the Giant was in there, who was amazing, but the Hulkster was the guy.
The man in the house of cards.